What's up, guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and today I want to bring up a long lost rig. I know some guys still throw it. It's a technique that was made very popular and essentially created by KVD and some buddies. That is the double Zulu rig, okay? The double fluke rig, the donkey rig, Zulu rig, whatever you want to call it. This is where you have a fluke running up your line, just loose on your main line, and then another barrel swivel down to another fluke. This is probably the most naturally erratic system of rigging that you can still fish fast on calm days, slick water, clear water, where all reaction baits kind of just don't even get sniffed at that point. This one still catches the tarnation out of them. The double Zulu rig, it's not the most complicated thing. It can be a little irritating to tie up, so I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks to that. The rigging for it, when I really like to use it and how I like to really use it. I used to fish this a ton about, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. KVD released a video on it. I tied a double fluke rig different before. Ever since they released that video, the double Zulu rig, I went and did it this way, and I believe it was 12 years ago. I could be wrong, but I used to catch them all over the place on this rig, and I recently started using it again. You guys know the power that a fluke has. You're essentially doubling the power, but you have to fish it different, and the fish attack it differently as well. So let's go over it. First things first, okay? Let's imagine this is just your main line. Let's not worry about that one bait. This is just your main line here, going to a barrel swivel to about a foot and a half, yeah, maybe even 15 inches if you want. You can do shorter. What I like is about a foot and a half of length to my main line bait. I'm using a 4/0 EWG BKK Chimera hook. They're super sharp, and I'll show you a close-up of that. Then up from that barrel swivel, I have my main line going through one end of another barrel swivel to another leader to another size 4/0 Chimera to another fluke. All that's doing is running freely up there. Some people say put a bead right there. You really don't need it. Barrel swivel to barrel swivel is great. One critical factor is you look at the length. You want the one that runs free to be at least a few inches up from your main line bait. Now, I actually like it to be about halfway. About half the length is good. You don't have to be overly critical. If you want it to run tighter and erratic, you can make that about 6 inches and make that about a foot. It becomes about a foot long package, because once it gets really long, it becomes more difficult to throw, and you're gonna need a 7'6" rod, and I'm gonna get into the details of that. But what I like to do ahead of time in a sandwich baggie, if I know I'm gonna be throwing this rig up, is just tie it onto the swivel, have the swivel alone, tie that up, and tie another one and have it in a sandwich baggie ready to go to tie it up once you get out there, because that's a lot to work with, tying it up on the water, especially if you're out on a windy day. So where does this shine really, really well? Like I said, calm, clear, slick water conditions, shad spawns, fantastic. Now, what you're gonna notice right here, this is a tiny barrel swivel, okay? These are size 10s. Size 10 is the average size that I use. It's a very small barrel swivel. The reason for this, it doesn't have a lot of mass. It doesn't drag your baits down in the water column. Now, the main line here is 15 pound. I suggest nothing less than 15. You're kind of fishing this in and around heavy cover a lot of the time. Sometimes you catch 2 fish at the same time. I can't even tell you how many times I've caught 2 fish at the same time on this rig. I'll even give you a tip on how to pull that off a little bit more often. Now, if you find that the fish are just chasing deeper and they don't want to get things off the surface, with these lighter barrel swivels, as you're working it, these flukes occasionally jump out the surface. They cross each other. Very, very realistic bait fish running. If they don't want to break the surface, switch to a larger barrel swivel. Also, if you're fishing this across the bottom during a shad die-off later in the year, typically beyond 8 foot deep, I'm not gonna fish this, but later in the year, if I see a lot of seagulls roaming around come winter when that shad's starting to die off, I will fish this along the bottom and have a ton of success that way. So I'm typically always using 15 pound fluorocarbon. If you like to fish it on the surface, mono is just fine for that. This is very, very unique in that sense. Now, when you are fishing this bait, this rig, not this bait. When you're fishing this rig, let me clarify there. It's very common that a bass shoots up and hits the bait with its mouth closed. Do not be tempted to set the hook the moment you see the fish blow up. Just keep working it, or pick up the slack line, or feel for that fish before you swing. Oftentimes when there's more than one bait, they swim through it. It has a tendency of drawing more than one fish to where they get into that predatorial mode of attacking a school of bait fish and trying to wound it to come back to eat one. So oftentimes you're gonna see a lot more fish activity chasing or swirling and swinging, then coming through back to eat. So do not be tempted to swing the moment you see a fish or you see that blow up happen. Let them load up on it. It's a soft plastic. Any type of fluke bait is gonna be fine. This happens to be the Zoom Salty Fluke, just the standard size right here. I use the Z-Man on one a lot in the fall. It stays up higher, it's super durable, especially if I'm in the Delta around stripers too. I like those baits to hold up. So that holds up remarkably well at the same time. But this is nothing special. It's not overly complicated. It's very affordable to do this. So with my rig right here, you're looking at about 2 foot of working line to cast. I may have a few inches down from my swivel. So it's a big, long, oblong rig. So what's critical is you have a longer rod. This is the Sticks reaction stick. This is a 7'6" medium heavy power rod. Now, it's a moderate action, bending more towards the middle, but slightly more moderate fast. Reason why that's critical is you want to make a really long cast with this rig and work that water. Twitch, twitch, just like a normal jerkbait. Pause, twitch, twitch, pause. They're gonna cross and zigzag one another. And that 7'6" allows you to have that longer leader hanging out the end of your rod and able to cast it and work it a lot easier. You do not want a short rod. We have low stretch lines nowadays. You don't want a very stiff rod. So probably your cranking rod that you have there will work. And most people on a cranking setup are usually running about 10 to 12 pound tests. You can get away with 12. What you might want to do is run your hooks more exposed. Instead of that hook being buried back into your plastic, just barely get that skin of that back of that bait right there over the tip of that hook. You don't want to have to drive the hook out through the thick part of the plastic. So run it exposed, just that hook point, just easy enough to get out there if you're running on 12. The lighter line, yes, you will get more bites. So rule of thumb, I see shallow bait, I'm fishing this thing fast across the surface. I don't see it later in the fall. I see a lot of bait birds. I'm gonna cast it out there with a bigger swivel, let it get down and work it back, guys. If you have never tried the double Zulu, the double fluke, the donkey rig, whatever your buddy calls it, or whatever old timer you know that says, I know that rig, Nick, go out there and give it a shot. It is extremely fishy. If you're an impatient fisherman, this is a fantastic setup. A lot of those days where you're typically, like, your brain's telling you, I need to go finesse fish to get these fish to bite, you throw this and you will be shocked. Slick calm, clear water, pressured, post frontal, they jump up and they grab this thing where they grab no other baits. It's truly amazing, guys. I appreciate the support. Make sure to follow me on all the popular social media channels. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.